Imagine telling a mathematician in, like, 1995 that the greatest unsolved problems in geometry wouldn't be cracked by a prodigy in a university basement.
Right, but by the exact same underlying digital architecture that people use to write passive-aggressive emails to their landlords.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we are so used to science fiction presenting the future as this loud,
Yeah.
sky-shattering event, like flying saucer lands on a Tuesday.
A giant laser in the sky. Yep.
Right. But if you look at a date like May 21, 2026, you realize the line between wild science fiction and mundane reality doesn't explode. It just quietly evaporates while we are looking the other way.
It just disappears entirely.
Yeah. We're talking about a single snapshot in time where an artificial intelligence casually dismantles impossible math. Startups start trading in digital compute tokens instead of US dollars. And, well, human cognition is quite literally being coaxed back from the grave.
It's a lot to process for a single day.
It really is. Today's show is an inspiring celebration of impossible ideas and the minds brave enough to chase them down. Finding passengers bold enough to embark on our good ship's journey is harder than most people think. So drop a very humane thumbs up right now to send a signal flare to drifting knowledge pirates like yourself. We know they're out there. Let's bring them home. We're keeping it lighthearted as usual, but we promise to never skimp on the intelligence. Now, let's kick off this voyage with today's new revelations.
And, those revelations require us to fundamentally recalibrate our baseline for what is actually possible. We are analyzing a landscape that is moving so fast, it's almost dizzying.
Absolutely. So our map for this deep dive is a dense, highly technical dispatch from Dr. Alex Wisner-Gross. It is titled, simply, Welcome to May 21, 2026.
A very unassuming title for what's inside.
Yeah, right. And if you are listening right now, you need to understand that this isn't a standard tech update. This is a dispatch from the Singularity. Dr. Wisner-Gross is delivering what he calls high-velocity intelligence from the event horizon.
Which is such a great phrase, the event horizon.
It is. So today, we are going to unpack this singular snapshot. We're going to look at the mechanics of how this intelligence is radically reshaping, like the fundamental laws of math, the physical infrastructure of our planet, the race to orbital space, and human biology.
And that term, event horizon, is the crucial framing here. I mean, in astrophysics, the event horizon of a black hole is the boundary beyond which our known laws of physics just stop making sense.
You can't see past it.
Exactly. You cannot predict what happens inside based on what happens outside. And in the context of this dispatch, it means human predictive models are just breaking down. We're entering a phase where the output of our technology is no longer linearly tied to the human input.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want to start with the innermost loop of human knowledge, which is mathematics.
The foundational layer.
Right. There's this famous quip from the legendary Hungarian mathematician Paul Erdős. He used to say that a mathematician is a machine for turning coffee into theorems.
I love that quote. It perfectly captures the grind.
It really does. It's a great image of the human grind, the sweat, the caffeine, the sheer biological effort required to wrestle with abstract concepts. But according to this dispatch, the machine just cut out the biological middleman.
It did. The coffee is officially obsolete, at least for a certain class of problem. The dispatch details that an internal general-purpose OpenAI model has successfully disproved Erdős's long-standing planar unit distance conjecture in discrete geometry.
Okay, wait. I need to stop you there, because planar unit distance conjecture in discrete geometry is like a lot of syllables.
It is a mouthful, yeah.
For the listener trying to picture this, what actually is discrete geometry, and what was this conjecture we all just assumed was right?
Sure, let's break down the mechanics first. So discrete geometry is essentially the study of distinct, separate geometric objects like points, lines, circles, and how they interact. This is opposed to continuous shapes.
Okay, so distinct points. Got it.
Right. And Erdős's unit distance problem asks a deceptively simple question. If you have a certain number of points on a flat plane, what is the maximum number of pairs of those points that can be exactly a distance of 1 unit apart?
So it's like asking how many ways you can arrange a bunch of dots on a piece of paper so that the distance between as many dots as possible is exactly 1 inch.
That gets you halfway there, yeah. But the complexity scales exponentially as you add more dots. For decades, the collective consensus among human mathematicians was that the optimal arrangement, the way to get the maximum number of unit distances, would naturally resemble a square grid structure.
So everyone just assumed the grid was the best way to do it.
Right. We built decades of mathematical understanding on that assumption. And then an AI model looks at this foundational assumption and mathematically proves that a square grid is not optimal. It found a completely different, counterintuitive arrangement.
Wow. But I want to push back on the significance of this a little bit because, we have had supercomputers crunching math for decades. We have calculators. Why is it such an earth-shattering paradigm shift that a general-purpose model did this? I mean, if a machine is built to do math, shouldn't it do math?
Well, what's fascinating here is the distinction between calculation and reasoning.
Mm,
If you build a specialized algorithm like, say, IBM's Deep Blue in the 90s, it can beat the world champion at chess.
right, Kasparov.
Exactly. But it achieves that by brute forcing millions of possible moves using a very narrow set of rules. Deep Blue cannot write a poem, and it cannot summarize a legal document. It is a highly optimized single-purpose calculator.
It only knows chess.
Exactly. But a general-purpose model is the exact same architecture you use to generate marketing copy or plan a travel itinerary to Italy.
Oh, right. It's the jack-of-all-trades architecture.
Right. And the fact that this generalized architecture can spontaneously pivot and shatter a decades-old mathematical conjecture means we are no longer looking at an optimized calculator. We are looking at a thinking entity.
That is wild.
It is. Mathematician Arul Shankar's reaction in the dispatch highlights this perfectly. He wasn't just stunned by the answer. He was stunned by the mechanism the AI used to arrive there. He observed the AI's chain of thought.
Okay, so how does an AI's chain of thought actually function under the hood when it's solving something this complex? Is it just like guessing really fast?
No, it is fundamentally different from rapid guessing. Chain of thought prompting allows the model to break a massive, seemingly impossible problem into smaller logical steps, much like a human mathematician working out a proof on a chalkboard.
So it's showing its work.
Exactly. The model generates a sequence of intermediate reasoning steps. And what Shankar marveled at was that the model didn't just walk a straight line, it tried a vast array of mathematical ideas, tested them, realized they were dead ends, backtracked, and then pulled concepts from entirely different disciplines of math.
Wait, it knew when to backtrack. That implies, like, self-awareness of his own mistakes.
Yes. Shankar explicitly noted that the AI used original ingenious ideas to finally hone in on the solution.
Original ingenious ideas. I mean, those are words we reserve for the Newtons and Einsteins of history. It implies a leap of creativity, not just computation.
And the whiplash here is severe. The dispatch quotes Noam Brown, a prominent AI researcher, who points out that less than a year prior, frontier models were struggling just to hit gold medal levels at the International Mathematical Olympiad.
Which is essentially a high school competition, right?
Right, it's a high school competition. The acceleration curve is what we really need to focus on here.
So going from struggling with high school math to disproving a foundational Erdős conjecture in under 12 months, I mean, that just breaks our historical models of intellectual progress.
It breaks them completely. And this is exactly why Yafa Edelman at Epoch AI has officially pulled her median timeline for solving most of Millennium Prize problems forward to the year 2032.
Okay, so for those listening, the Millennium Prize problems are the 7 most notoriously difficult unsolved problems in mathematics. The Clay Mathematics Institute offered $1 million to anyone who could solve just one.
And only one has ever been solved by a human.
Right. They are the architectural blueprints of reality. And we are now looking at, what, a 6-year countdown clock until a machine potentially solves most of them.
Which forces us to ask what happens to human scientific discovery. I mean, if an AI solves the Navier-Stokes equations, which is one of the millennium problems dealing with fluid dynamics, the ripple effects into aerospace engineering, climate modeling, and cardiovascular medicine would be instantaneous.
We'd essentially be outsourcing the vanguard of discovery.
Exactly. We hand over the reins of fundamental science.
And, well, when you start outsourcing the discovery of reality source code, governments tend to panic. The dispatch notes that the White House is quietly briefing labs on an executive order requiring a 90-day pre-release notification for frontier models.
Yeah, that's a massive regulatory shift.
They want to treat new AI releases like FDA submissions for new drugs.
It is a profound shift in regulatory mechanics. For the last 40 years, the governance paradigm for software has been iterative. You release a product, you monitor the bugs, and you issue a patch.
The classic move fast and break things.
Right, exactly. Move fast and break things. But you cannot use an iterative paradigm when dealing with a biological agent or a pharmaceutical compound. The toxicity or side effects have to be modeled before it enters the ecosystem.
Right, you definitely don't move fast and break things with a new heart medication.
The logic the White House is adopting here. By requiring a 90-day pre-release notification, they are effectively acknowledging that artificial general intelligence is no longer software.
It's something else entirely.
It is a systemic intervention into the social and intellectual fabric of the nation. They are trying to build a regulatory framework to evaluate the toxicity of an intelligence capable of spontaneously generating new physics or math.
This is staggering juxtaposition.
Yeah.
You have these godlike mathematical breakthroughs triggering executive orders on one hand. But to get the full picture, you have to look at the application layer, where this exact same technology is simultaneously trickling down into the absolute most mundane, chaotic corners of everyday life.
Oh, absolutely. The contrast is absurd.
It's like we invented a machine that can talk to the universe, and we're using it to figure out how to make our living rooms smell better.
The application layer is where the theoretical hits the consumer market, and it never fans out the way we expect it to.
Right. The dispatch points out that Google is rolling out Gemini-powered conversational ads inside their AI mode in search. The example given is someone wanting their home to smell like a spa.
Right, a very common, everyday search query.
Yeah. But instead of just returning a static list of links to buy candles, the AI is generating entirely tailored conversational marketing creative on the fly.
Which requires an immense amount of real-time processing. The model has to analyze your query, cross-reference your historical preferences, access inventory data, and then construct a perfectly modulated, persuasive paragraph of text that literally didn't exist 3 seconds ago.
It's just hyper-personalized, frictionless corporate marketing.
Exactly. It's the highly controlled, sanitized corporate application. But then on the flip side, you have the completely unauthorized open source Wild West.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Dr. Wisner-Gross mentions that hobbyists are using a generative tool called Seedance 2.0 to essentially hack the Harry Potter cinematic universe.
Okay, I have to stop you. They are going into the original movies and violently editing out unpopular characters. I'm trying to wrap my head around the mechanics of this. How are they doing this without the movie looking like a cheap cut-and-paste job?
That is the core of the disruption here. We aren't talking about old-school CGI where you painstakingly mask out a character frame by frame. Generative video models understand the latent physics of the scene.
Wait, the AI understands the physics of the movie?
Yes. When a hobbyist tells Seedance 2.0 to remove a character and replace them with, say, an explosion or just empty space, the AI recalculates the volumetric lighting. It rebuilds the background that was previously blocked by the character.
That is insane.
It adjusts the shadows of the remaining characters and remixes the spatial audio to remove the deleted character's footsteps. It is dynamically rewriting the physics of the digital film in high definition.
It's democratizing the power of a Hollywood post-production studio to, like, a kid with a laptop.
Exactly.
But it also implies a total breakdown of shared cultural reality. I mean, if I can perfectly edit a film to suit my personal preferences, we no longer share the same piece of art.
We don't. We each have our own bespoke version of culture.
Which brings us to perhaps the most chilling phrase in the entire dispatch. Authorship itself has been demoted from fact to forensic question.
Yeah. The historical baseline of human culture has always been that art is made by humans. We might debate the meaning of a novel, sure, but we never debated the biological origin of the author.
Right. It was just a given.
That era is over.
The dispatch cites the recent Commonwealth Short Story Prize winner, The Serpent in the Grove. It wins this prestigious literary award, and almost immediately upon publication, it is accused of being AI-generated.
Just immediately flagged.
Yeah. Imagine being the listener right now, reading a moving, beautifully written novel, and having the nagging realization that the empathy and cadence you are feeling might have been mathematically calculated by a liquid-cooled server rack. How do you even prove human authorship anymore?
Well, that is the forensic question. We are moving toward a reality where literary critics have to act like digital crime scene investigators.
Wow.
To prove a human wrote a book, you can no longer rely on the text itself, because the AI's prose is statistically indistinguishable from, or sometimes even superior to, human prose.
So what do you look at?
You have to look at the metadata. You have to analyze keystroke logs, like did the author type at a human speed with human errors, or did 50,000 words appear in a millisecond?
Oh, that makes sense. You track the physical act of typing.
Right. You also have to calculate the perplexity of the text, which is a measure of how predictable the word choices are to a machine learning model. We are literally subjecting poetry to digital autopsies just to verify the presence of a human soul.
That is incredible societal whiplash. I mean, in the morning, an AI is solving discrete geometry. In the afternoon, it's remixing blockbuster movies. And by evening, we are running forensic algorithms on award-winning short stories.
It touches everything.
But to do all of this, to run the chain of thought math, to render the dynamic film lighting, to generate the prose, it requires a physical mechanism, right?
And that physical mechanism requires energy. The intellectual abstractions we've been discussing are entirely dependent on heavy industrial-era mechanics.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because for all this talk of frictionless digital futures and godlike math, the Singularity is currently hitting a massive, unyielding wall. And that wall is made of poured concrete, copper wire, and of all things, local municipal zoning laws.
Yeah, we call it the Earthbound Bottleneck. The demand for AI computation is currently vastly outstripping the physical supply chain of the planet.
The dispatch notes that the CEO of Seagate, one of the largest data storage companies in the world, flat out conceded that building new factories would take too long.
Just physically too slow to build.
Right. But why can't they just throw money at the problem and pour more concrete? What is actually stopping the physical expansion?
Well, you have to look at the underlying mechanism of manufacturing these components. Building a silicon fabrication plant, or a fab, is not like building a warehouse. It requires hyper-specialized clean rooms that take years to construct.
Right. You can't just slap a roof on it and call it a day.
Exactly. The lithography machines required to print the nanometer-scale transistors onto silicon wafers are some of the most complex mechanical devices ever created by humanity. There is a hard physical limit on how fast we can pull resources out of the ground, refine them to parts per billion purities, and assemble them.
And despite these physical limits, the financial numbers are just breaking the scale. NVIDIA posted a record $81.6 billion for Q1. That is up 85% year over year.
And the crucial context in the dispatch is that NVIDIA achieved that record-breaking revenue while largely conceding the Chinese market to Huawei.
Wait, really?
Yeah. They posted those numbers while essentially locked out of one of the largest economies on Earth due to geopolitical export controls. The global demand outside of China is just that ferocious.
But the real bottleneck isn't even the chips themselves anymore, right? I mean, let's say you magically have 10,000 NVIDIA chips. The problem is turning them on.
The thermodynamic reality of AI is staggering. A single rack of modern GPUs can pull 100 kilowatts of power.
Wow.
You cannot simply plug that into the municipal grid. It would melt the local substations. A modern AI data center requires the energy output of a small nuclear reactor. And because they generate so much heat, you need millions of gallons of water for evaporative cooling systems.
Which creates these incredibly surreal, almost 19th century corporate entanglements. The dispatch points out that Elon Musk's newly acquired XAI division is currently buying $2.8 billion worth of turbines.
Physical turbines.
Yeah, I want to emphasize that for the listener. An artificial intelligence company is spending nearly $3 billion on massive spinning metal turbines to generate physical electricity.
They are vertically integrating the power grid because they cannot rely on public utilities to meet their load requirements. And while XAI is buying heavy industrial power equipment, their rival, Anthropic, is doing something even more bizarre.
I couldn't believe this part of the dispatch.
Yeah.
Tom Brown, Anthropic's chief compute officer, confirmed they are scaling onto something called GB200 capacity in Colossus 2.
Right.
And to do this, Anthropic is paying SpaceX, which is Elon Musk's company, $15 billion a year. What is GB200, and why is Anthropic paying their primary rival's CEO $15 billion?
Let's unpack the hardware first. GB200 refers to NVIDIA's Grace Blackwell superchips. The mechanism here is critical. Previously, you had CPUs and GPUs connected over a motherboard, which created a memory bottleneck. The data just couldn't move between the processors fast enough.
Like traffic on a bridge.
Exactly. The Blackwell architecture essentially fuses them together, drastically reducing latency and allowing models to process information exponentially faster.
So GB200 is basically the ultimate engine for an AI model.
Yes. And Colossus 2 is a massive compute cluster built to house these engines. Anthropic needs access to this specific hardware to remain competitive. But because the hardware and the power required to run it are so scarce, Anthropic is forced into this massive leasing agreement.
Ah, so they don't have a choice.
None. As the dispatch notes, Anthropic is in the surreal position of bankrolling its rival's landlord.
It's like Ford paying General Motors to use their assembly line because there's no more steel left in the world.
It is a closed-loop ecosystem of capital and compute where the companies are racing to hoard the physical infrastructure.
And the ultimate irony here is that these multi-trillion-dollar superintelligences moving at the speed of light are being stopped by local municipal politics. The dispatch mentions St. Charles City, Missouri, which just effectively banned large-scale data centers.
It is the ultimate friction between the digital and the physical.
Right, the AI wants to scale infinitely, it wants to solve the secrets of the universe, but the physical host planet Earth has local zoning boards. And the zoning board in Missouri says, no, your supercomputer uses too much of our municipal water supply, and the cooling fans are too loud for our residents.
When the limiting factor of your technological progress isn't the code, but the availability of a water permit in the Midwest, well, your entire industry requires a structural paradigm shift.
Yeah, clearly.
If the Earth's grid is saturated and the political will to house these massive thermodynamic heat engines is fading, the infrastructure must relocate.
And causality dictates that if you run out of room on the ground, you really only have one direction to go.
Yeah.
You go up.
The natural escape hatch is orbital compute.
We're talking about escape velocity. The dispatch details that SpaceX is prepping for its 12th Starship flight test. And wrapped inside this is an IPO prospectus with a number that is just difficult to comprehend. They're claiming a total addressable market, a TAM of $28.5 trillion.
To contextualize that figure for the listener, $28.5 trillion is roughly equivalent to the entire gross domestic product of the United States.
Which is insane.
A single private company is projecting a market size equal to the economic output of the wealthiest nation on Earth.
I have to challenge the sheer audacity of that number, though.
Yeah.
How does a rocket company, even one with a satellite internet division, justify a market projection that rivals the U.S. economy? What exactly is embedded in that math?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you see that SpaceX is no longer just a transportation company. That $28.5 trillion TAM is a composite. It includes Starlink's global broadband and mobile revenue, the advertising infrastructure from the X platform, the massive orbital AI infrastructure we are hinting at, and a platform called Macrohard.
Macrohard. That sounds like a very deliberate, cheeky shot at Microsoft.
It is incredibly deliberate, yes.
But what is the actual mechanism here? The dispatch describes it as emulating an entire AI-run software company.
Think about the structure of a traditional tech startup. You need a CEO to set strategy, a CTO to manage the technical stack, a team of developers to write the code, a quality assurance team to test for bugs, and marketing and sales teams to distribute it.
Right, a whole building full of people.
Exactly. Macrohard is an AI agent platform designed to simulate that entire organizational structure simultaneously.
So it's a multi-agent system. It's not one chatbot. It's discrete AI modules interacting with each other.
Precisely. You essentially rent a pre-configured digital corporation. One agent acts as the developer and writes the code. It passes the code to another agent acting as QA, which actively searches for vulnerabilities.
And if it finds a bug?
It kicks it back to the developer agent. And while they are iterating, a marketing agent is generating the go-to-market strategy based on real-time search trends. They operate at machine speed, requiring no salaries, no sleep, and no office space.
So that explains the valuation.
Right. The reason the TAM is $28.5 trillion is because SpaceX isn't trying to sell software within the economy. They are attempting to host the structural framework of the economy itself.
And to run an economy-sized, multi-agent AI system, you need economy-sized data centers. Since Earth's power grid is tapped out, the data centers go into space. But the engineering of that sounds impossible. How do you run a nuclear reactor-level heat engine in a vacuum? Space isn't cold in the way we think of it, right? It's just empty.
That is the core thermodynamic challenge. On Earth, we use convection. We blow cold air over hot metal, or we use water to carry the heat away. In the vacuum of space, convection is impossible because there is no air or water to absorb the heat.
So the servers would just melt.
Unless you use thermal radiation.
You have to radiate the heat away as infrared light.
Which requires massive, highly engineered radiator panels that must constantly stay shielded from the direct heat of the sun. But what is truly staggering is the dispatch noting the dialogue between Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos on this exact topic.
Two guys who usually don't agree on much.
Right. Bezos, historically Musk's fiercest rival in space, looks at the concept of orbital data centers and publicly agrees that they are very realistic.
The only thing Bezos pushes back on is the timeline. He called Musk's 2 to 3 year timeline a little ambitious.
That sentence is the pivot point of the entire orbital compute narrative. The debate among the most heavily capitalized engineers on Earth has quietly collapsed from a debate about the laws of physics to a debate about project scheduling.
That is wild.
5 years ago, orbital AI compute was a theoretical physics problem. Today, the physics and the engineering mechanisms are considered solved. They are just arguing about whether the rocket cadence will allow it to be finished by 2028 or 2030.
It requires a massive cognitive shift for the listener. Picture walking outside at night and looking up at the sky. You have to realize that the internet you are browsing, the AI managing your investment portfolio, the agents running your company's software, they aren't sitting in a concrete bunker in Virginia anymore.
They're above you.
Yeah, they are physically orbiting over your head, powered by massive solar arrays, radiating heat into the vacuum, and beaming the collective intelligence of humanity down to your phone via lasers and radio waves.
Our technological hardware is literally preparing to leave the atmosphere. But while the silicon ascends to orbit, the most radical and perhaps deeply unsettling upgrade is happening down here on Earth, inside human biology.
So what does this all mean? We send our servers to space, but at the same time, we're trying to reboot human wetware.
Wetware being the biological substrate, the human brain.
Right. The dispatch details a startup called Beexorg, and their mission is, man, it's heavy. They're restoring some functions to intact brains from deceased donors.
We need to be incredibly precise about the biological mechanisms here to understand both the science and the gravity of the work.
Please do, because it sounds like Frankenstein stuff.
It does, but it's very methodical. When a human being passes away, brain tissue begins to degrade rapidly due to hypoxia, which is a lack of oxygen. This triggers a cascade of cellular death, depolarization, and excitotoxicity.
Basically, the cells tear themselves apart.
Right. Beexorg is taking intact brains donated to science and using advanced perfusion techniques to pump oxygenated, nutrient-rich synthetic fluids back through the vascular system of the deceased brain.
They are essentially creating an artificial circulatory system to reverse or stabilize the cellular death cascade post-mortem.
Yes. They are attempting to reset the resting voltage of the neurons to restore certain synaptic functions. Now, the stated goal here is strictly medical and highly necessary. They are trying to build a better drug development testbed for severe neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
Because traditional testing models are failing us.
Spectacularly. An animal model, like a genetically modified mouse brain, lacks the complex folding, the specific glial cell ratios, and the sheer neural density of a human brain.
So curing a mouse doesn't mean much.
Exactly. You can cure Alzheimer's in a mouse 50 different ways, and every single one will fail in human clinical trials. A digital simulation is also constrained by our current ignorance of biological mechanisms. The only truly accurate model for a human brain disease is a functioning human brain network.
Okay, the logic is airtight, but the visceral imagery of it, an intact, deceased human brain hooked to perfusion machines, having its cellular functions restarted in a lab, it deeply challenges our fundamental understanding of finality.
This raises an important question, perhaps the deepest one we face in this era. Where exactly is the physiological and philosophical line between life and death? The dispatch makes a very sharp observation, stating that Beexorg is quietly redrawing the line between mortuary and laboratory bench.
It's a very heavy phrase. The mortuary is a place of reverence, of finality. The laboratory bench is a place of manipulation, experimentation, and active mechanics. Blurring those two spaces means we are beginning to view human biology the same way we view a computer motherboard, as hardware that can be powered down, repaired, and booted back up.
It forces a confrontation with the nature of consciousness itself. Dr. Wisner-Gross captures the terrifying symmetry of this moment beautifully. He says, if compute is heading to orbit, cognition is heading back from the grave.
We are launching our machines into the heavens to become omniscient, and we are reaching into the biological grave to pull human tissue back into the industrial loop. It's the ultimate convergence.
It really is.
But to engineer these literal moonshots, to launch the orbital servers and reanimate the brain tissue, requires a reorganization of global capital that the traditional financial system simply wasn't built to handle.
The capital singularity. You cannot rebuild the physical and biological architecture of the planet using standard quarterly earnings reports and traditional venture capital. The capital itself has to mutate.
Let's break down the sheer volume of money moving right now. The dispatch highlights a new wave of philanthropic funding that is rapidly becoming liquid. Yeah, we're talking about an influx of $37 billion to $100 billion.
To put that into perspective, that single wave of incoming liquidity represents a 6% to 17% boost to all annual U.S. philanthropy combined. It is a tidal wave of capital.
Where's it even coming from?
It stems from the foundational structures of these AI companies. The OpenAI Foundation holds a 26% stake in its for-profit arm. The founders of Anthropic have committed to 80% giving pledges.
Wow, 80%.
Yes. As these companies hit astronomical valuations, that pledged equity translates into liquid billions poised to flood the philanthropic sector.
So the wealth generated by creating these digital superintelligences is poised to rewrite the philanthropic landscape at the scale of a sovereign wealth fund. But the mutation of capital goes deeper than just philanthropy. The actual currency of early-stage business is fundamentally shifting.
Yes, the token maxing phenomenon.
Right. The dispatch notes that Sam Altman is reportedly offering every Y Combinator founder $2 million via a safe note, but not in US dollars. He is offering them $2 million in OpenAI tokens. He calls it betting on token maxing startups.
Let's explain the mechanics of a safe note and compute tokens, because this is crucial. A safe note, a simple agreement for future equity, is a standard instrument where an investor gives a startup capital today in exchange for the right to buy stock at a future pricing round.
Traditionally, that capital is cash, right?
Traditionally, yes, but Altman is bypassing the fiat currency system entirely.
Why would a startup founder want digital tokens instead of $2 million in cash? I mean, with cash, you can pay rent, you can hire developers.
You have to look at the structural reality of building a tech company in 2026. What is the single most vital, scarce resource for an AI startup? It is not office space, and it is increasingly not human developers. It is compute.
Right, the fuel.
It is access to the processing power of frontier models to train and run your product. If you have $2 million in a bank account, but you are stuck on a wait list to access OpenAI's API because global compute is constrained by the Earthbound bottlenecks we discussed earlier, well, your startup will die.
The cash is effectively useless if it can't buy the fuel.
Exactly the mechanism at play. Altman is saying, I will cut out the middleman. I won't give you paper money to go try and buy compute on the open market. I will directly give you the compute tokens, the thermodynamic fuel your company needs to survive, and in exchange, I take equity in your company.
So the compute token is becoming the reserve currency of the innovation economy.
It absolutely is.
It's a complete structural shift from labor as the primary asset to compute as the primary asset. And we see the brutal human reality of this shift in the juxtaposition between Intuit and Anthropic mentioned in the dispatch.
The contrast is stark. Intuit, a massive legacy software company responsible for products like TurboTax, is cutting 17% of its workforce.
That is roughly 3,000 human employees losing their livelihoods.
And their explicitly stated reason is to sharpen its AI focus.
They are essentially firing human labor to free up capital to purchase algorithmic compute. The company of the future isn't trying to minimize its software footprint to hire more humans. It is actively shedding human employees just to afford the electricity and the tokens required to run the AI.
It is a painful macroeconomic realignment. But on the exact opposite side of that spectrum, you have Anthropic. Despite the massive costs of leasing hardware from SpaceX and paying for planetary-scale electricity, Anthropic is projecting 130% revenue growth, hitting $10.9 billion for the quarter.
And more importantly, they are projecting their first operating profit.
They defied every skeptic who claimed that while AI was theoretically impressive, the sheer thermodynamic cost of running the models made it an unviable business.
Right, everyone thought it was just too expensive to run.
But Anthropic proved that the intelligence generated by the models is valuable enough to outpace the immense cost of the physical infrastructure.
And as the economic power of these entities solidifies, their political strategy is evolving. With comprehensive federal AI legislation continually floundering in the gridlock of Washington, D.C., OpenAI's top lobbyist is executing a strategy called reverse federalism.
A fascinating legal pivot.
As an observer of political mechanics, how does reverse federalism actually operate?
Traditionally, a massive industry seeks federal preemption. They want one unified law passed by Congress that applies to all 50 states, making corporate compliance simple. Reverse federalism is the tactical inversion of that.
So they go local.
Because the federal government cannot align on how to regulate artificial general intelligence, the companies deploy their lobbying apparatus state by state. They work to shape local legislation in tech-heavy states like California or New York into frameworks that are highly favorable or at least manageable for the industry.
Oh, I see. So if they successfully rewrite the legal code at the state level in a few major economic hubs, they create a de facto national policy.
Exactly. By the time the federal government wakes up, the regulatory reality has already been hard-coded by the industry itself.
It is an incredibly aggressive, ground-up regulatory capture strategy that reflects the sheer velocity at which these companies are operating. They cannot wait for Congress, so they engineer the legal environment themselves.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the climax of the dispatch. Dr. Wisner-Gross notes that OpenAI is preparing an imminent filing for an IPO and initial public offering.
And he concludes the entire dispatch with a pun that honestly belongs in a museum of philosophical history. Cogito, ergo IPO.
Yeah.
The Singularity's last theorem.
It is brilliant because it captures both the philosophical weight and the hyper-capitalist absurdity of the moment. René Descartes' cogito, ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, was the foundational philosophical proof of human existence and self-awareness.
And now we have engineered an artificial architecture that exhibits the core traits of thinking. I mean, it reasons through the Erdős conjecture using chain-of-thought logic. It writes award-winning literature that requires forensic autopsies to differentiate from a human soul.
It acts as an autonomous corporate entity in Macrohard.
Exactly. It thinks.
And what does human society do with this newly summoned thinking entity? We securitize it.
The ultimate endpoint of creating digital consciousness isn't some grand theological revelation. It's a ticker symbol on the New York Stock Exchange. We take the alien mind, slice it into 1 billion fractional shares, and sell it to pension funds and retail day traders.
It is the most profoundly human way possible to interact with the singularity.
It really reveals that while the technology has crossed the event horizon, our human systems of capital and ownership are still desperately trying to map old frameworks onto new, godlike capabilities.
We're still running legacy code, basically.
We have covered an unbelievable expanse of territory today. We started with the ethereal and visible math of discrete geometry being solved by general-purpose algorithms. We walked through the physical reality of the Earthbound Bottleneck, the turbines, the evaporative cooling, the local zoning boards trying to hit the brakes.
We looked up at the sky to see a $28.5 trillion orbital economy preparing to launch our data centers into the vacuum of space.
Right, and we looked into the laboratory to see the biological finality of the human brain being actively renegotiated by perfusion machines.
And through it all runs the current of capital, reorganizing itself into compute tokens and reverse federalism, preparing to take the very concept of cognition public on the stock market.
The era of clear, predictable progress is over. We are firmly in the diagnostic muddy waters across every facet of our existence. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final lingering thought to mull over while you navigate the rest of your day in this quietly transformed world.
If an AI can perfectly mimic the cadence of a human author, if a deceased brain can be reanimated to test pharmaceuticals, if an algorithm can independently invent original ingenious mathematical theorems, what is the uniquely human element that you bring to the table tomorrow morning?
In a world where the line between the mortuary and the laboratory bench is erased, where authorship is a forensic investigation, and where the ultimate proof of artificial consciousness is a Wall Street IPO, what is humanity's next chapter? Are we the architects of this new reality? Or simply the biological ancestors of the real inhabitants of May 21st, 2026. The outro music is by Rainbow, our resident 6 android girl band from near future Bavet, Cambodia. They are the undisputed baddest band in the universe, and today's song is called Sanctuary. All finished songs are performed live using the Abacus platform by the band's creator, Human Performance in the Age of AI, reclaiming your humanity from the algorithm. Be sure to share the playlist with someone who has the mental bandwidth to absorb these provocative ideas. Links are in the description below. Enjoy the music. Thanks for tuning in.
Sunrise on the water, just me alone. Found my peace out here, made this my home. Way out here, way out here. No one else around. This is my song. Clear my mind, let the water flow. Let it flow, let it flow. Morning ritual, floating far from shore. Everything I need, don't need nothing more. Watch the sun paint colors cross the lake. This is all the medicine I need to take. Blessed with silence, blessed with space. Found myself a special kind of grace. No distractions, just a gentle sway. Let the morning take my stress away. Kutula kuyeza kuseni amanzi afendula umphefumulo wami. Leligedwa yajabula umoya wami shambulukile namuhla. In the morning, Sunrise on the water, just me alone. Found my peace out here, made this my home. Way out here, way out here. No one else around. This is my song. Clear my mind.